Report Manager is a web-based tool optionally installed on a server with reporting services. You create the URL used to access Report Manager when you configure a reporting services instance using the SQL Server Reporting Services Configuration Manager. I'll go ahead and start that up. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, the first thing I need to do is connect to an instance of reporting services. I'm going to be doing everything on this local machine, and so the server name is that convoluted server name, and I want to connect to the MS SQL Server instance. All right, I'm logged in as an administrator, so I didn't need to put in any particular credentials. But depending upon your security environment, you may need to do something different in order to connect to the configuration manager. The important tab is right here, the Report Manager URL. And as you can see, I've already configured this instance of reporting services, and so I don't need to do anything else. There is the link right there. It's the local machine name, and then it specifies the default port value, 80, and then the reports virtual folder. And right here is where you can change that. So if you have multiple instances of reporting services, maybe you have SQL Server 2008 and SQL Server 2012 and SQL Server 2014 all in a single machine, you can call the virtual directories. You can give them different names. But reports is the default, and that's what I've gone with. I only have SQL Server 2014 installed on this machine. But anyway, if this link isn't here, then you need to jump through a couple of hoops and create it. It's pretty easy to do, but it'll prompt you in order to create that link. All right, then you can also use this advanced button here in order to configure some additional options. They're all HTTP related. And these include things like the port to use, which IP address to listen to, because reporting services no longer uses IIS. It directly accesses the http.sys that is installed as part of Windows. And so this is where you would configure that access, that web access, in order to listen to requests for various services. Okay, you can also specify an optional host header as well as configure SSL in order to secure the communications between the client browser and the report server. Okay, now on a local development machine, these defaults are likely to all be fine. But you'll probably need to configure the settings more carefully on a production server. And then those settings are going to affect how you connect to reporting services. Essentially, it modifies this link that you end up using. Now, one more thing about reporting services use of http.sys. Again, it doesn't use IIS. But if the report server also has IIS installed and is active, then that means that you could have conflicts if both reporting services and IIS, or other web servers that you might have installed, like Apache. If the web servers, those multiple web servers, attempt to listen on the same IP address and ports. So you need to be careful of that. Now, LearnNowOnline has a documentation page that's called Install Reporting Services and Internet Information Services Side by Side. And that topic discusses installing reporting services and IIS together, as well as the interoperability issues that you're going to have to deal with. And there are versions of that page with information for each version of SQL Server, starting with version 2008 and later, right up through 2014. All right, now, once you've configured this link, this Report Manager URL, in theory, all you need to do is click this link and you'll go to Report Manager. So I'll go ahead and do that. That fires up Internet Explorer, and there we are. Now, in this particular case, this worked. The reason this worked is because I didn't really point it out, but remember when I started Configuration Manager, I got the little UAC dialog box that asked me if I wanted to run this as an administrator. I clicked yes, and the application started. But that means that I was already in the context of an administrator, and I just started Internet Explorer, and so that spawned the Internet Explorer process with those administrative privileges. All right, so I got into Report Manager. Now, unless you want to start Configuration Manager every time you want to go to Report Manager, there's a pretty good chance that you're not going to be quite so lucky. So I'm going to close this. I'm done with Configuration Manager. And now I'm just going to go ahead and click on Internet Explorer to start it. All right, so I go to a blank page, and I have a link there to Report Manager. And as you can see from the tooltip, it goes directly to localhost reports. 80 is the default port, so I really don't need to specify that. So I'll click on that and take a moment, and then I get this error. Okay, so this is a little bit bizarre. I can start it from Configuration Manager, but I can't start Internet Explorer directly and access it. Well, nice thing here is that it's one of the cases where a Microsoft provided error message does tell me exactly what the problem is. So it says user blah 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 Don Kiley does not have required permissions. Verify that sufficient permissions have been granted and Windows User Account Control or UAC restrictions have been addressed. All right, so the problem here is that in this particular environment, I've configured everything to just log in as an administrator, access as an administrator, because this part of the course is not about reporting services security. Something I cover elsewhere. So to make things easy, I just set it up as administrator, but it does mean that we need to do a couple different things in order to access Report Manager. So I'm going to once again shut down Internet Explorer, and this time, you probably guessed it, I'm going to right-click on it and right-click on it and opt to run as administrator. Once again, get the UAC because I'm trying to do administrative kind of things. And that once again loads up Internet Explorer, and I can go to Report Manager, and this time I get to Report Manager. Okay, so just be aware that particularly the first time you get into Report Manager, you may have to do some different things, again, depending upon your particular security environment. If you're on a domain, if you're using Active Directory, you're accessing a remote server, then you're going to have to comply with whatever conditions, whatever security hurdles that the admins have put in place in order to protect the SQL Server machine. Okay, again, I'm going on a local machine. Everything's set up as an admin. So the one thing that's slightly hard, not really all that hard, is that I need to run Internet Explorer as an administrator. Okay, another thing about Report Manager is that, surprise, surprise, it's a Microsoft product. And unfortunately, that means that it just flat out works best with Internet Explorer. And even further, you're best off running the latest version of Internet Explorer. Now, you might be able to limp along with Chrome or Firefox or Safari or some other browser, but that's likely to limit your experience with Report Manager. And it may even be the case if you're more than a couple versions behind in an Internet Explorer. Frankly, I don't use Internet Explorer as my default browser all the time, so I only use it when I'm accessing some reporting services report server. So just be aware of that. If you want the happiest experience, just bite the bullet and use Internet Explorer. That's my best advice for you. So once you've run the gauntlet that's necessary to start Report Manager in Internet Explorer, then you'll be rewarded with this home page that I'm showing you here. Now the contents of the page are going to depend on what reports and components that you've deployed to the report server, if any at all. All right, so let's start talking about the features of Report Manager. And one of the most important is searching for a report. Now, a well-used report server could have many reports, organized into as complex a folder hierarchy as you need. But anything more than a couple of folders with a handful of reports can make it hard for users to find the reports that they're looking for. So Report Manager lets you search for reports by name or by description. In fact, you're not limited to searching for reports. You can also find folders, linked reports, shared data sources, and other things on the report server, as long as you have the required permissions on the objects. And that's going to be a recurring theme as we talk about Report Manager. Report Manager doesn't let you do anything that you don't have permissions to do. And you can't even see things that you have no permissions on. Now, every page in Report Manager has a search box in the header. No matter what folder you start the search from, though, anywhere in the folder hierarchy, the resulting search is going to begin in the home folder and searches through all of the nested folders on which you're a member of at least the browser role. The list of results won't include any objects that you don't have at least minimal permissions on, which is a nice way of not confusing users by displaying reports that they can't view. It makes no sense to display a report, user clicks on it, and then told they don't have access. Now, to make it as easy as possible for users to find the reports that they need, you should include a meaningful and accurate description of every report on the server. Descriptions can go well beyond a limited title in providing the words that are likely to match a user's search terms. Okay, so just a word to the wise on that. Now, the search box performs a simple pattern match on the string of characters that you enter, searching for the string as a subset of each item's name or description. Unfortunately, it doesn't support Boolean logic or complex logical conditions using keywords like and or. But for the most part, a simple pattern match is going to help users find what they're looking for without returning an overly long list of results. Here I am back in Report Manager in the Home folder. I've uploaded a number of sample reports and other report objects. Basically what these are, they're a number of reports that I've created in different parts of the various reporting services courses and gathered them all together, put them in a single folder so that we can have some reports to work with as I show you the different features of Report Manager. So if you look at sample reports, you can see it's a variety of sample reports from around the course. And there are a number of reports, and so we can work with them in various ways. And then there's also some data sets, as well as some shared data sources, basically just to the different AdventureWorks databases. All right, so I'll go up here into this search box, which again is on every page within Reporting Services or within Report Manager. And I'm going to do what is probably a very common search, sales. So probably a fairly common search term for any organization that has reporting services reports because people are concerned about sales. Okay, so I type in sales, I'll hit enter, and there are the results. And there you can see there are a number of objects that have sales within them. One thing that's interesting right off the bat is that it's not just searching the name of the object. And that's shown up right here in that I have sample reports, which doesn't say sales. But if I hover over it, you can see that it includes the phrase, including a number of sales samples using the AdventureWorks databases. Okay, so it's searching not just the name of the object, but the descriptions. So this is where, as I mentioned earlier, it definitely behooves you to, when you upload the reports to the report server, include meaningful descriptions because it's going to make it easier for your users to find those reports when they search for them. So the search reports show any applicable folders first. If I didn't have sales in the description, that wouldn't have shown up. So it's not going to show a folder just because it has reports in it that have sales in the name or something like that. Okay, so be careful of that little distinction. Okay, so it displays folders first and then all of the other items. It's going to display them alphabetically by title within each group. So the folders are going to be alphabetical and then the other report objects are going to be alphabetical. Okay, so as in other parts of Report Manager, you can tell by the icon what each object is. And so the most common ones are the folder. You can see that icon right there, and you can, of course, hover over it and see that it's a folder. Now, these are basically just organizational structures within Report Manager, very similar to the folders on your hard drive. At least conceptually they are. But one thing is that you can't tell from this icon what kinds of objects or items that the folder contains. So it has that little thing that looks like reports, but if it was a folder just full of data sets, it would have the same icon. It's a folder icon. Okay, then this is a report. And once again, the icon doesn't indicate the type of report. That would require Report Manager to reach inside the report definition to determine characteristics of the report. So it doesn't do that. But you can tell that this is a report. And then these are shared data sets. And then there's also another icon that looks like a little hard drive connected to a network. I didn't pull up any search results like that, but the data sources will appear as well if they have the name sales within the title or the description. Okay, now the default view for search results, as it is for all other folders within Report Manager, is this tile view that I have shown. If there are a lot of reports, or if you want to see other metadata about each item, you can switch to Details view by clicking on the button on the right side of the shaded portion of the page header. So right there. And there you get more of a list. And you can sort them in different ways. You can see the descriptions. You can see some basic information, like this is the folder that each is contained within. And then there's this very intriguing last run column as well. All right, now you can sort reports. So if I wanted to sort them by description, I can do that. I can come back and sort by name again, in reverse order by name. Notice that folders are always at the top, and then all other report objects follow it. One downside to this is that there isn't any way to adjust the column widths. There's that intriguing vertical bar right there between columns, but notice no matter how slowly I move the cursor there, there's no way to adjust the column widths. So that's a downside. But good news is that if you use this maximized on a reasonably high resolution monitor, you should see a pretty nice list. I'm showing you this at a relatively low resolution, so everything doesn't quite fit all that nicely. Okay, so let's go back over to this last run. Now, I just uploaded these sample reports, so initially I'm not terribly surprised that this last run column is blank, because theoretically what this should show is the last time the report was run. May not know whether it was run by me or run by anybody, but there's nothing in the column. But unfortunately, I'm using SQL Server 2014, the initial release of it, and there's a bug in Report Manager so that this last run column is always blank, no matter whether you ever run the corresponding report or not. Now, disappointingly though, even for Microsoft, is that this bug has been around at least since the version of reporting services that shipped with SQL Server 2008 R2. According to the last run date missing in Report Manager Detailed View, which is an item on Connect that Microsoft uses to collect bugs, that was initially filed by Joseph W. Leithlein on August 17, 2001. According to that Connect item, the bug is now fixed as of 2001 and will be resolved in the next major version of reporting services. And I guess I should actually check that date. I may have a typo in my notes. Maybe it was 2011. But anyway, it was a while ago, well before the release of SQL Server 2014. So hopefully it'll get fixed sometime. Okay, now from within these search folders, what happens when you click an item in the search results or any other folder depends on what type of item it is. So clicking on a folder opens up that folder. And notice that it keeps the details view. I'll hit the back button on my mouse, come back to the search results page, and click on a report. So let's look at category sales by year. I can tell it's a report by that little icon right there. Notice that I have the path to it too, so I can see the full path to the report. I'll click on it, and it'll load that report. I'll go back one more time. And for most other items, what it's going to do is it's going to take you to the properties view. So you can change the characteristics of this object on the report server. So you can do things like change its name, set security, and so forth. And this makes sense because I can't really run a data source as such, or a data set. So showing the properties makes sense. So that's the search capability of Report Manager. Nothing super complex, but for most users, it's probably going to help them find what they're looking for.